Welcome to Live. And for those who are new, I am Stacy. I am an operations strategist and capacity consultant. So I am here to support organizations and companies that need help with getting their systems together so they can have a seamless operational infrastructure that supports the company's vision. Okay. And today the topic is going to be about if your team does not follow through, right? The problem might be your follow-up systems or lack of one. So we're going to talk a little bit about what that looks like and you may not want to hear this. It's fine, right? I'm not giving you $100,000 today just for coming to this live, so it might not be what you want to hear, but it is something very important to ensure the success of your company and organization. So we're going to talk about it regardless. So if you're catching this live, hashtag live. If you're catching the replay, hashtag replay. Let me know you're here. Um, Now, one thing I want to say is that people rarely fail because they're unwilling. Because people have, I don't know if, and not everybody does it on purpose, right? So somebody's not going to take a job to purposely fail at it. So they don't fail because they're not willing. They usually fail because there's no structure in place to support their follow through or to ensure that they're able to succeed. And that's what I need you to understand as a leader of your company and organization is that oftentimes it's not because the person is not willing to do what is necessary to succeed. It's the lack of structure that is causing them to fall behind or not do what you expect them to do. So, what that looks like for a lot of leaders and managers, that looks like deadlines are being missed, right? And tasks are only half done. And also, quick thing, be if you're here, hashtag live or like and share this post, because then if you're here, please show some love. That's all I ask, because then I go live. I don't have to, but I love coming here and educating everybody. So go ahead and show some love. So, other ways that it shows up in companies and organizations besides missed deadlines and tasks not being done, you sometimes you things that you thought were happening, they stall out where they're talking about it, they're talking a big game about it, right? But then suddenly that thing falls through the cracks and nobody's talking about it anymore. So instead of moving forward, what happens is that you're actually chasing people for updates and redoing work that should have been done right the first time. Now, if you know what I'm talking about, definitely drop a one in the comments because that is one of the biggest reasons a lot of managers, supervisors, leaders burn out. It's them having to chase people to do the work they're supposed to be doing or doing the work they're supposed to be redoing it because they did it wrong. Okay. So today I'm going to unpack what operations actually are and why they're the missing link for follow through. How a weak infrastructure in a company or organization can keep your team stuck in a cycle of like dropping the balls essentially, right? And I really want to unpack the role that systems have in all of this, how workflows and processes play a role in execution, right? To ensure that your team is able to succeed. And we'll talk about all these things because the lack of structure, it's costing your company and organization time, a lot of time, money, and credibility that you may not have, or things that you hold dear. So let's talk about it. Let's unravel that and discuss what that's supposed to look like for your company because that matters more than you think. Now, for those who are unsure what operations are, because I've met some people that you know what COO, like Chief Operating Officer, are operations this, operations that, but a lot of people like Believe it or not, they're faking it till they make it. They don't know what the positions mean or what these people are supposed to do. So we're going to talk a little bit about what that is supposed to look like. So operations basically is the behind the scenes. Let me do something here. So it's the behind the scene backbone of your organization, right? Because then there's the front facing and there's the behind the scene. And the behind the scene is just as important as the front facing because if your behind the scene is wackadoodoo, then the front facing is not going to be able to perform the way it's supposed to, right? It's the behind the scene, what it is for your company or organization. It's the people, it's the processes, it's the tools and systems that make things happen consistently without having to rely on one person's memory or good intentions. Because if these things, if the behind the scenes backbone of the company or organization, it's set up correctly, then it enables your company or organization to function in a way that supports its vision and its growth throughout time, right? I want you to think of it like this, right? Your mission is why you exist, right? Your programs are what you do. So you have why you exist, what you do. So mission is why you exist, programs, what you do, and operations are how you actually deliver consistently and effectively. So the operation is the how. So why, what, how. Okay, so you have mission is the why, programs is the what, and operations is the how. How you actually deliver consistently and effectively. So without them, you're running on goodwill and crossing your fingers that everything goes well, and that's not sustainable. Because if you had a sustainable or like the right infrastructure in the first place, you wouldn't have to try to like freak out every year like you don't know what's happening. So really remember what all of these things stands for. Mission is the why you exist. Programs is what you do. And your operations is it's how you actually deliver consistently and effectively. So all of these three things are what you need to think about and operations why it's actually important in the big picture of all things, right? Now, when things happen to slip through the cracks, what happens is that leaders often think that their team is unmotivated, right? Or they're not detailed oriented, or my team, like I do all the work and they don't do the work, they're supposed to do. But most of the times, it's not a people problem, it's a systems problem because people come on the team and they want to do a good job, right? But then the systems they don't allow them to do a good job. And I know it sounds like a babysitting job for a lot of people, but if you set up your systems right, then it's going to help with issues that you encounter with your team and help you prevent these things because the system is a repeatable method for getting something done. So think of that as one way that you're going to prevent cracks or slips from happening in your company or organization. Like, so system, it's a path, right? Well worn, it's clear and direct, and it takes you to the same place every time without you having to think about every step. Okay. Now, again, if you're live, hashtag live, like I keep saying, like show love in this algorithm so Facebook can do its thing and send it elsewhere. And for a system, like not only it takes you to the same place every time without you having to think about every step, right? That's why you need it when you have team members. I'm going to give you an example of a repeatable method. So every Monday morning, right? Imagine that the project manager on your team opens the content calendar, right? They check for deadlines for the week. They assign tasks in the project management tool and they tag the person responsible. Everyone gets the same notification, the same deadline reminder, and the same update procedure. There's no guessing there. There's no, oh, I forgot, and there's no wondering who's supposed to be doing what. That is an example of a repeatable method. That's an example of a system you can have in place to ensure that project management and tasks are being tracked and there's an accountability system because everybody's aware of who's responsible for what. There are deadlines, there are reminders. So that's an example of a repeatable method because the project manager goes and does the same thing every Monday morning. So again, that's an example of a repeatable method for those individuals that are not familiar with what systems are. So that's exactly what I mean by systems. When you hear me talk about systems, that's what it is. That's what it is. Now, a system that's very important that a lot of companies and organizations don't have, right, is an onboarding system, especially the smaller companies and the smaller organizations. Because, like, imagine that you go and hire a new program coordinator, right? And there's no system, and their first week is basically random conversations because you don't know what to tell them. You don't know what they like. You don't know what's necessary to ensure their success. You're just swinging it, right? There's mismatched instructions because you have an idea of how it's supposed to be done. Your colleague, who is possibly the executive director or whatever, has an idea of how it's supposed to be done. And basically, you guys are piecing together by asking whomever is available, right? And that's an issue within the grand scheme of things because in this scenario, the new program coordinator is going to have a huge gap that they need to fill because now their instructions were unclear from jump when they onboarded. So there's a big issue with the onboarding system. Now, if you think about it, an onboarding system, I'll give you an example of what an onboarding system is supposed to look like. So you can see if you have any gaps within your system for onboarding and correct it if necessary, right? So now the example I have, right? Day one, let's say you have a welcome email, login credentials, organizational chart, role specific handbook. So the person knows, okay, I am hired as the program coordinator. This is the handbook for program coordinators because these are tasks the program coordinator has to do, and this is specific to my role. Or if they're a supervisor, a handbook specific to supervisors, right? Day two and three, you have them work on training modules on programs, right? Because you have four different programs and they need to do training modules on all of these programs so they can understand the ins and outs of these programs. And you show them internal tools and processes so they can understand these things on days two and three. So in day four, they shadow an experienced team member on a live project, a project that's actually happening right now. They shadow that person, right? And on day five, they review the responsibilities that they're supposed to have with their manager or supervisor, confirms the expectation, and set their first 30-day goals. Now, this is an example of an onboarding system because what happens, it's not just an orientation that you have for the onboarding system, it's a structured process that gets the new hires contributing faster and with fewer mistakes because you checked a few boxes and it was consistent. Now, if you hire another program coordinator, the person will go through the same thing. The only thing that may vary is the shadowing because every day is different. We already know that. Okay. But everything else is the same. They have the same information, right? And they have the other thing that's going to differ is their first 30-day goals, but at least they'll have the information that they need from jump to make sure that they succeed in their role, right? So these are things I want you to consider. Now, if you have any questions specific to what a system is supposed to look like, what a repeatable method is supposed to look like, definitely let me know in the comments. Joshua, I'm on live. Can you please step out? Definitely let me know in the comments and then we'll talk a little bit more about that and what that's supposed to look like for your organization or company. Now, yeah, onboarding system scenario, like that's definitely something I wanted to share with you today that I hope was helpful so you can start auditing. If you don't know how to audit your systems, I am offering free operations and systems audit, free 15-minute audits. You can apply for one if you click the link in my bio or the link in the comments. That definitely will take you to the my stand store where the first free resource is for the application for that audit. Definitely apply for one so I can help you audit and figure out what you need. Okay. And usually, what happens when you don't have a system for certain things, the other thing that came up in my mind that a lot of people think, is not necessary or they don't pay attention to is the grant management system. Excuse me. Grant management systems, if you don't have a system for grants, deadlines have a tendency to sneak up on you. And what happens there is that reports end up getting rushed and you're scrambling to find receipts or data points for this grant, right? So without a system, the other thing that can happen is that all grant deadlines that are entered into the share calendar, give me one second. So when you have a system for grant management, the grant deadlines can be entered to a shared calendar and have automated reminders so everybody on the team can be very on the same page when it comes to deadlines for a specific grant, right? And the other thing with a system for grant management, especially if you have a grant management dashboard, right? Assign owners for each step, such as data collection, because then it will vary with grants. And that's why it's important that you have a system, a dashboard, where there's an owner for each step. Because some grants, once they're awarded, you'll have to submit reports, right? Who's responsible for data collection? Who's responsible for writing the report? Who's responsible for approving the submission? So all these things need to be mapped out so everybody knows what they're responsible for and the deadline for it, and track the status of these things so you know where each grant stands and you're not scrambling to get it together. Okay. So these are things I want you to keep in mind when you are managing grants. Now, if you don't have a grant tracking system, I do have a system guide set up on my stand store for $47 that walks you through step by step how to set it up. And these instructions, there's instructions for Monday.com, Asana, and Airtable. So if you want this, I will put this on in the comments because then it's not on my front facing stand store, but I will put the link in the comments on Facebook. So if you're interested in getting that, go ahead and click the link in the comments if you're watching the replay and get that. So that's my 2 cents on that. Okay. So the other thing we'll bring up today, because then I want to make sure we're good on time. Because then I have 30 minutes today and then on to the next thing. But I want to make sure I am showing up and teaching. Because then, believe it or not, I enjoy sharing this information and seeing you win. And I do have resources that could support you and your organization. So definitely feel free to always reach out in the DMs and let me know how I can support you. So the other thing I want to mention is that strong processes equals natural follow through. I know I typed this up in my notes because then for those who know, I have notes all the time. Okay. Okay. So yeah, so strong processes and clear workflows lead to natural follow through, right? So strong processes, let me type this in. Strong processes and clear workflows workflows will lead to natural follow through. Now, what do I mean by that? So, first, let's break down. A process is basically a series of steps you take. For those who didn't know it, the process is a series of steps you take. And the workflow is how those steps move from person to person until completion, or from task to task until completion. So, let's say that you run an annual gala, right? Without process or without workflow, what tends to happen is that someone forgets to send sponsored thank you letters, right? Or volunteer schedules are sent late, or the photographer never gets there, like, doesn't get there on time. So, processes and workflows, what it does, it ensures that there is like completion and follow through happening with whatever task that you have at hand. So let's same annual gala. Let's say you have a process. Let's say you have a workflow. What can happen there is that, sponsorship thank you letters are automatically assigned to the development coordinator after the event, due within 3 days of the event, because you have a timeline, you have a process, and you have a workflow using a pre-approved template, right? Because these little things matter, because then you want to make sure that your company and organization have a level of credibility, and your operations and systems are helping you keep that front and center. Now, the other thing that processes and workflows will help you do, let's say you're hosting an annual gala, like the volunteer coordinator gets the final roster 2 weeks before the event and confirms shifts via automated email. So this process and workflow like made sure that these things were happening without somebody dropping the ball on it. Okay. And the photographer showed up. Not only they showed up, they got their shot list at least a week prior, and it was reviewed and approved by the marketing person, the marketing director, whoever is your marketing person. So these things, these little processes, like some people think it's not important, but you need to have that in place to ensure that you're running a tight ship that's sustainable, because what happens is that it makes these things seamless. It happens without having to deal with you being the bottleneck in the whole process. Okay. Now, when you don't take care of these things, then lack of structure happens, and that's, you remember I told you, it costs you time, it costs you money, and it costs you credibility if you lack structure. Now, it can cost you money because if you miss a grant report, you have a late invoice, that's money you're not getting, right? Untracked donor follow-up, it's potential revenue loss at that point. So it can cost you money if there's a lack of structure in your company or your organization. Imagine you applied for a 25K grant and you can't reapply because you missed one reporting deadline and they don't want to work with you anymore. So lack of structure will cost you money. Okay. And it will cost you time, because when things aren't being tracked appropriately, you spend hours in update meetings or basically chasing status emails instead of actually moving projects forward like they're supposed to. Or you're looking for documents that are supposed to be already like organized and in a place, and again, lack of structure. Okay? Because then you're applying for a grant and they ask you for um let's say your EIN letter or whatever you're looking for, your insurance, anything. But you're spending hours looking for that thing or contacting these people to find it because your company and organization is not set up the way it's supposed to. And the last thing, it's costing you credibility. A lot of people don't think about it because they don't, right? So let's say you have funders, you have partners, and even staff. Ooh, just hit my lip. Even staff is noticing when commitments are not being met, over time, what it does, it erodes trust in the stakeholders that are working with your company and organization. And trust is harder to rebuild than any system that you could put in place. So you have to start thinking about how do you build the systems to ensure that you don't erode the trust and the credibility you already have. Because in a lot of nonprofits, social enterprises, companies, you have trust with your community. You don't want to lose that. You want to make sure that you have a level of consistency and sustainability that keeps them trusting you and your company. So that's where we are. And I want to make sure that that's something that you're keeping on top of mind. Now, a case study I have, a mid-sized youth nonprofit, right? They ran a annual community events with multiple partners, right? And every year they'd have great attendance. That's the other thing. You want attendance because sometimes you'll host an event, like you're looking forward to it, spend boku money, and then nobody shows up, right? But what happened? They had great attendance, but they had terrible follow-up. There was no thank you notes to sponsors. Remember, sponsors. There was no post-event surveys to attendees and no donor updates, right? So partners began hesitating on collaborating again and sponsoring. Sponsors were quietly pulled back. Okay. And a new operations consultant came in and built a post-event follow-up system for for that organization. They assigned owners for each task. They set deadlines and integrated it into their project management software. Because your project management software is supposed to help you do your job. Okay. So what happened is the next event, they had 100% of sponsored thank you letters that went out within 48 hours because now there's no excuse. It's already a process, a workflow. Attendee surveys, they had a 40% response rate, and sponsor retention rate increased by 25% the following year because now the sponsors trust them and appreciate working with them because they showed appreciation to their sponsors and they were followed up with. So it wasn't the people that changed, it was the system of how they did things and how well they did things that changed. It was the system. Okay. So definitely don't sleep on auditing your operations and systems to make sure that you are doing a great job, right? And if that sounds familiar, I want you to stop guessing about where the gaps are in your organization. Schedule a free operations and system audit, but you have to apply for it first. So go ahead and click the link in my bio or in the comments and apply for a free operations and system audit. Because in the 15 minutes, we're going to pinpoint where your processes are breaking down and where systems could save you time, money, and headaches, right? And then I'll give some suggestions onto what resources and how I can help you or what could help you. Okay. So definitely click the link in the comments or bio for to apply for a free mini audit. And why audits are necessary? It's because you can't fix what you can't see, and you can't fix what you don't know how to fix. An audit is not about just adding busy work, right? It's about making the invisible visible for you and your organization as a whole, because it shows you exactly where your operational deficiencies are, where the gaps are, so you're not wasting money on tools that you don't need or building systems in the wrong order. Because that's the other thing. Oftentimes, I see people like spending money on tools they don't even use. Because then I will tell you, you know how sometimes I have to audit my business financial spending just to see what tools I'm paying for and which ones I'm not using, the purpose of it, and why I'm not using it. If it's the right time to spend money on it, it's the same thing your organization has to do to ensure that there's no gap there. And if you're using the wrong software, and things like that. Because once you have that clarity, you can actually move straight into building that infrastructure, right, that supports your company or organizational growth. Okay, so usually that's where my precision strategy sessions come in, because I want to provide leaders like you with the tools and strategy needed to approach your operational infrastructure in a way that makes sense. So if your organization is making more than $50,000 in annual revenue, or your company is actually generating enough revenue already, the precision strategy session is your direct route to working with me so we can build a customized operational blueprint and you can get the strategy that you need in an action plan to move forward. Because in the 90 minutes, not only do we audit fully your existing operations, we map out the most urgent systems that your organization needs, right? And we identify high impact improvements necessary and start building a realistic action plan for your team. Okay. It's $597 and I have 3 spots for next week. I'm already booked for this week. So next week, there are 3 spots open for next week. DM the word strategy or see the link in the comments or in the bio. Either way, if you're watching this on Facebook, it'll be in the comments. If you are watching the replay, it will be in my bio. It's called a precision strategy session. Okay. And before I leave you, I want you to remember that your team's follow through is not about motivation. Like it happens that it can be motivation, but it's not all the time about motivation. Oftentimes it's about infrastructure. Okay. Because when you give people the right systems, the right processes, the right workflows, the right execution for what they're doing, it becomes the default, not the exception. So you have to think about that. And I want you to make quarter 4 of 2025 the quarter where things get done without you chasing them. Okay. So definitely check the comments for links that you need. And I hope to see you soon. This week's going to be a busy week with strategy sessions and some client work, and I want to make sure you're on my calendar. So definitely looking forward to chatting with you and helping you, your company, and your organization do the work that it's supposed to be doing. But with that said, I hope you have an amazing Monday, have an amazing week, and we'll talk soon. Bye, y'all.